Hello and welcome to Cyber Dunedain, our first podcast, May 1st. We are just coming back from RSA Security 2023, and my colleague and friend and peer had a chance to be there in person. I attended live, was sending out things on LinkedIn, my website, following the sessions. And this is our recap of the top 12 things that my colleague and I found interesting for the show. And with that, I'm Brett Shepard, founder of Cyber Dunedain. I'll turn it over to my friend to kind of introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Hyun Park, Chief Analyst here at Amalgam Insights, firm I've been running for the past 6 years, going across, where we look at IT management, data governance and management, machine learning and AI, as well as the Office of the CFO. So lots of looking at risk and compliance and the issues that in business policy.
Fantastic. All good stuff and very relevant for RSA. And just for the benefit of our audience, I'm going to share a screen. You may have seen this image in the promotions. And on this kind of Miro page, you'll notice that myself and Hyun are going to tag team. And so we are going to bounce, back and forth. And I may kind of mention a few other things here just to get started. For more information on the two companies, visit amalgaminsights.com or cyberdunedain.com. We are not taking live Q&A today. A future podcast may, but you are welcome to email or LinkedIn direct message to either of us with your questions. And with that, I will kick it over to the first one of RSA, back to post-COVID normal. What was it like to be there in person?
Yeah, so it's been interesting to compare. I was actually at RSA both last year and this year, and I feel like this is the first year that the traffic felt back to normal. Last year felt like it was about half capacity, and people were still trying to figure out the rules of how do I go to a tech conference in what was then, still very, very, very recently after the vaccine came out. People are still trying to figure out what the rules really were for thousands of people gathering in Moscone Center, especially in California, where I would say our rules around masking and gathering were probably stricter than most of the rest of the country. So we had some local rules that were that had recently been rescinded, but people were still trying to figure out what they were doing. This year, it was more, I would say, back to normal. You saw a lot of the marketing tactics that you would typically expect at a live show at mass scale. You had the Formula One racing simulators and the booths that were basically bars where you're looking for the top shelf liquor, all of those things.
And hopefully you, as a premier analyst, hopefully you did get some of that, top shelf liquor, at whatever time of the day in a show that you kind of consider it appropriate.
I try not to drink before noon, but sometimes, sometimes the work compels you. No, but seriously, one thing I thought was interesting was that when you think about trade shows and what we've been through the past 3 years, there was this culture built around the virtual show in 2020 and 2021, where you had to engage people when they were at home, and it meant doing things a little bit differently, sometimes adding some activities, doing some pre-game preparation, pre-event preparation, being able to hold miniature show within a shows sometimes. And I feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity. I think that although things are back to normal, I would say that both in the positive way of seeing a lot of great interaction, but also kind of in a negative way in that I felt like the event booths weren't significantly different from what you would have seen 4 years ago. And you would have thought maybe there'd be more digital interactivity, more opportunities for maybe in-booth hackathons or show within a show type capabilities. Just that it was good to see that at Moscone. I do think that the scheduled content was excellent. We'll talk about this more, in the keynote when we're talking about the keynotes and some of the things we saw.
Anything else before I switch over to my kind of first one?
No, I think I'm good for setting the table right there.
Excellent job, thank you. And so I'm going to talk now about something that's not new at this RSA, but it involves a culture change for me as a kind of mid-career professional, in that I am still not used to seeing the NSA booth and activity at the show. Now, and so for younger people watching today, it may come as a surprise that, unlike what I'm showing right now, there was a time in the not so distant past when the National Security Agency did not have a booth. In fact, when I started to date myself, I worked in a skiff, the secure room, as a teenager, early adult. Sadly, pretty much the exact same ages as the fellow who's been arrested. But I remember very distinctly back when the Maryland Turnpike to turn off to the Maryland agency, there was no sign. Anything to add there from your experience about our friends from Maryland or friends from Virginia who, in the case of NSA, have a booth and now, as I found out, they have swag.
Yeah, I think it partially just speaks to how open, bizarrely, the cybersecurity, I guess, community has become. The idea that the NSA just recruits openly at the most public of institutions and most public of events at this point. Everybody, they just assume everybody knows what they do, and they're okay with that. And it's just a different generation completely.
Well, and going back to the hackathons, it would not surprise me, and I'm going to completely break protocol. Instead of saying Maryland agency, I'm going to say it wouldn't surprise me that the NSA has their secure Wi-Fi and they purposely leave a port open, something along those lines. Just like there's one LinkedIn profile of an RSA executive that I think pretty closely is fake, but I'm wondering if the NSA or the Virginia agency did this just so that anyone who did kind of poke around with it in that port or that profile, as you point out, gets a recruitment letter. So up next in our top 12 hit parade, AI and machine learning for cyber defense.
Yeah, it is amazing to me to see just how much vendors are branding around AI now. I know that it's in the news, and I know everybody's talking about everything from Chat GPT to auto-generated this to neural net that. But even so, at the end of the day, so many security companies are focused on basic, straightforward security capabilities, right? Whether it be around antivirus or firewall or just patching, tasks that are defined and are actual work. And there's not really that much of a need for actual artificial intelligence or machine learning or any sort of algorithm that is self-learning in nature because you're trying to do a discrete activity. Now, there are certain activities where you definitely want to have iterative processes to figure out how to prevent threats from coming in and being offensive and being actually taking that proactive role. But that's not all of security. And it is frustrating to me to see how many companies call themselves AI when often they just have some basic statistical approach or some sort of anomaly detection that is fairly straightforward versus something that is actually iterative and has an ongoing learning process and has the level of AI that we think of in a modern context, meaning Google strength, OpenAI strength, the things that are really smart and almost human in reaction. That's not actually all that common in the security space. And I think a lot of security vendors are doing themselves a disservice by just glomming onto AI without really thinking about what those expectations are for AI today.
Yes, agreed. And and that is a perfect lead in to my next talk, which is the Tower of Babel security platforms. Already kind of prior to the show, I did follow AI of asking Chat GPT-4 of tell me about RSA conference 2023. Tell me about the company RSA. And it gave a very nice kind of AI description of the rather complicated history of RSA, EMC, VMware, Dell. The ships have kind of passed each other in the night, but the captains of the ships are still talking to each other and, having shore leave parties together. And I thought of this as the Tower of Babel, which is an ancient religious text where there's each year at RSA, or every couple of years, there's a new acronym. And so we've gone from security information and event management, or SIM, to XDR, to platform, plus all of the other good stuff of endpoint security, application security, network security. And for this year in particular, when each of otherwise very good keynote talks came from said vendors, and they talk about platform, I really thought of this Tower of Babel of at some point, it may come crashing down. Or to kind of foreshadow a point coming up, it's just going to be really expensive. And so for those who've seen the movie, and remind me the title, it's Everything...
Everywhere, all at once. Yeah.
Yes. For those who've seen the movie, sorry to change the analogy. You could also think of if Tower of Babel, it is a cybersecurity version of an everything bagel. And so if in reality you take that chart of where there's the vendor box in the middle, their platform, their partners, their integrations, all the different data sources, it becomes that everything bagel in the movie, which if you've not seen, definitely watch it. If you have seen, it means, therefore, if you take it to its comical conclusion, it means the end of the universe, because everything falls into it and becomes like a black hole. And so meanwhile, I was reminded by the technical practitioner sections of a neighbor about a mile away, who is a fishing boat captain. I'm speaking to you from Maine. And he has what's called a fishing stage here. And he was in the process of getting some rocks to fill the holes in his fishing stage. In many cases, what they're talking about in the practitioner shows is that equivalent of the lobster boat captain, my friend and neighbor Steve, putting rocks in because apparently mice or rats were getting in his basement, where it's the equivalent of, okay, we need to block Discord and Telegram. And so I think that what is missing is some type of middle ground. And from a Tower of Babel to the lobster, fisherman's boat shack, there's, the analogy of a skiff, which is modular, which I worked on at the very beginning of my career for the NavAir Systems Command. The problem is it's not very people friendly. A skiff, all the ones that I've personally been in, for example, you're in a metal box with no windows, and you work in a metal box for 8 to 10 hours a day with no windows, no natural light. You can, of course, get one of those little fancy light bulbs and plug it in, but then take it with you, because the person after you who has the next shift, they might steal it. So you need to take your light bulb home if you want it to be there next time. It's just not very natural. And so I think that overall, what I think is lacking currently in these discussions is some type of middle ground. that there is something that is a it is it's not the Tower of Babel that's going to fall down. It's not the metal skiff. It's not the fishing boat shack where you can just you all you want to do is fill a couple of holes, but then wait for what's going to come next. And so you stopped out the rats and the mice, but what about the deer who come by? And so this is something that I'm actually personally working on at Cyber of and taking from kind of those images of buildings. What I'm envisioning is something like this. So a cybersecurity equivalent of a design and innovation collective, including an annual summer residence program where fellow Dunedains, fellow younger practitioners, vendors, et cetera, get together, and that we produce the software equivalent of something like this house. So I would say that any thoughts on there on kind of that House of Babel from day one of everything is a platform and the corollary of SIM is dead, but all love SIM because it's SIM plus XDR plus all the new stuff and building up that platform.
Right. I think of a couple things here. That Tower of Babel, I felt that when I was on the floor. You are there, you see hundreds of different solutions, all talking about the one little piece of security that they manage, whether it's API management or looking at SaaS, looking at multi-cloud issues, trying to figure out where they are in network traversal or duplication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it made me think of that Nassim Taleb concept of anti-fragility, where you're trying to go for this kind of counterintuitive notion that the more you take a beating, the stronger you get. You want to be like Muhammad Ali or like your immune system or something. That's like an ideal security system. But instead, what we have are these 30 different pieces, all glued together by strings. Going back to that skiff analogy. It's like if you had to manage like 30 different skiffs during your shift before you move on, and it's just you keeping it all together. That's what security feels like right now. You've got an overworked security team that is trying to fill in every possible gap to try to solve the problem. And at the same time, we know that the majority of high crimes in cyber often have some sort of internal risk, an employee, a soft risk. I think of in violent crime, like 2/3 of all murders in America, maybe more, are done by family and friends. So honestly, although stranger-led violent crime is definitely what we are afraid of, the majority of violent crime is done by somebody already, and pretty sure the same is true in cybersecurity, where the key to committing a crime isn't necessarily having the best attack strategy, but to find the most naive person in the company who's willing to give you a password or give you port access.
Indeed, and that was actually a very good, I think, summation of the our fifth point of AI and machine learning by threat actors. Anything else that you wanted to add there before I go to my part of my number three?
Yeah, I just a thought on things like a ChatGPT, that I think that now that ChatGPT can create a lot of automated text and is pretty good at imitating a few standard tones, that's going to be a real problem for trying to sort out realistic replies from garbage. Automated replies just got a lot better, and ChatGPT by nature is good at giving inoffensive, neutral, average sounding content that doesn't set off any alarms, and can do that with some level of personalization as well.
Very good points. And to kind of continue in that vein, I'm going to likewise go from the Tower of Babel to specific things that stood out to me this year in terms of threat actors. And this one I credit the United States Air Force that as I was getting ready to attend the show, she put out on her personal LinkedIn post, and hopefully all of you are seeing this today. This is if you've not seen the overall series, check out on Brett Shepard LinkedIn. I did a 5-part preview to the show where I talked about kind of open API and as we were just talking about, and in the part 2, linked to the Master Chief, her personal website. And for those of you here who happen to play the Halo game, yes, that she has that title. She is the Master Chief of the Air Force. So this is just the most recent, where there are fake LinkedIn profiles that pretend to be her. So she posted back, and we're back with another round of fake accounts. Be smart about the information environment, folks. If you see fake profiles and accounts, report them. And then she, added to it, still married and not Fredo, because some of them took her photograph and said, "Hey, I'm single, give me a call." And one of them very oddly titled her name Fredo Alaska. And if you're familiar with the classic, movies about the character Fredo, I can say one thing with absolute certainty: she does not look like Fredo. So why someone would call her Fredo Alaska, I don't know. But that is mine. And to just for the basis of time, going from fake LinkedIn profiles to shift left and DevSecOps. So
Yeah.
the floor is yours, sir.
And, I think we are increasingly running into this challenge where to fix all these security problems, we are trying to shift left and make sure that our data is cleaner, that our development processes are cleaner, that we are baking security into both our code and our workflows as a starting point when we're creating all of the applications and services that we now use. And it was great to see that at RSA. A lot of companies had significantly further shift left strategies than they had in the past, and gave more of those security tools directly to the developers and architects that are responsible for core processes. But my concern there is that it feels like the developer is becoming increasingly at the core of all IT. Everybody in security wants a developer's time. Everybody in finance wants the developer's time to figure out what's going on with the cloud perspective. Everybody in operation wants the developer's time to figure out how their software supply chain is working and what has been sourced, what is open source. Every part of the company goes back to the developer now in trying to figure out what they're trying to do next. And so we've got DevSecOps, we've got FinOps for finance ops, which is really Dev FinOps. We have all these different ops titles and capabilities that all go back to the dev, really. And this is unfortunate for devs who really just want to sit and code and don't want to deal with all of the rest of the stuff. But the businesses are increasingly becoming dev-centric across every aspect, and security is definitely no exception.
Wonderful. Thank you much. And remind me, I will, if you're agreeable, some point in the future, I invite you back, because we could easily have an entire podcast on the great topic of DevSecOps.
Oh, yeah.
But keeping the ball rolling for this one podcast, I will turn now to a blast from the past of Discord, in that and this is feedback that I will share and volunteer even for the 2024 RSA. Of I think one thing missing is this. We have this dynamic of major event occurs in cybersecurity, the Discord breach, the arrest, the ramifications for it. And when I logged in on Monday, this was the only thing that I found on a keyword search of Discord, which happens to be truly excellent, I'll bet dated. And so I highly recommend, if you have not seen Brooke Chelmo, who has since changed jobs, he was a senior strategist at Sonic Wall. This is a really excellent presentation that discusses the security risks as they were known 2 years ago, but also does a very nice job of describing, kind of similar to, what does a developer think of companies that, use Discord, gamers that use Discord, and obviously it's, some, of all the universe who uses Discord, it's only some subset of that, hopefully a small subset, who are bad actors. And so I highly recommend this talk, and I'm hopeful for 2024 that whether it's peers, whether it's myself volunteering, that we can have something where it is keynote time, but we reserve it. And so let's say if Hugh, the conference chair lead, says, okay, Brett, give it a try. Give me a couple of keynotes blocks and just say like to be determined. And what instead of the 6 months in advance, you do a submission. We do a very quick something. Maybe the weekend before, maybe a week before, maybe we do the hackathon where it is something that on the assumption that we are going to have more and more cyber threats every year, and pretty much by definition it means that a week before RSA, 2 weeks before, a month before, something really important is going to happen. And for the sake of fellow attendees, we can't assume that the 2-year-old talk happens to be really good, like this one. And so the idea for the broader point for Hugh, the conference organizer, is to try to kind of, just like we don't need to build a house of Babel all the time, or we don't need to just plug the rat holes. We need something in the middle. I think we need something in the middle for the sake of all of us who truly love RSA. And so I think anything you want to add there before we turn to your next session of the price for security?
I think Discord, to some extent, shows the increasingly collaborative nature of security, both black hat and white hat. I think it's great to see. I did enjoy, there was an RSA keynote session that was basically a simulation of a government response to a threat and showed that panel discussion. I really enjoyed that because I thought it was a realistic example of what a war room looked like. And that was fun to see. I would love to see more of that because I think that's realistically where security is headed. When we are dealing with responses, we've got the war rooms, whether they be the policy war room, the network war room, the private cloud war room, data center. We've got these various different teams that are trying to do things, and frankly, technical people aren't always that great at collaboration. And that's just the truth. We get places by being great individual contributors, right? And then we become superstars in our little areas, but that doesn't necessarily make us great collaborators. Yes,
and that's why I'm so grateful to have the superstar with me today. So,
oh, you're too kind.
Next up, price for security.
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with IT cost. One of the things that our firm is best known for is talking about the IT rule of 30, which says that basically any IT category that has gone unmanaged typically has 30% in waste or duplication or poorly contracted spend that can be eliminated through a careful audit. And honestly, security probably isn't an exception to the rule because there are so many things that have been overlaid over each other through the years. But doing that due diligence obviously means that if you don't do it correctly, you are going to you're going to deal with unintended threats. So you can't just go willy nilly and rip things out of your security portfolio. That said, there are better ways to do things in the here and now. One of the challenges that I run into most on the security side that I've got to admit I did not see that much about on the RSA floor is how to talk about the value of security in a way that resonates at the executive level. Too often we just count on the ability to make the pitch that this is so important that you just got to do it. Dealing with that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and trying to make that feeling so strong that people have to buy. But you can only do that so many times, right? With a security product, because can you do it 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, 50 times? Like you run into a ceiling at some point.
Well, and that reminds me, and I won't quote him by name because I did not have a chance to, just get approval for him. But for the technical practitioners at the show, one of the best social comments that I caught, and I forget if it was the RSA, forum or LinkedIn or elsewhere, but was someone who talked exactly about that, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing in the words of just of why I love working with technical practitioners. He did his booth tour, watched the demos, and he said there are a lot of people here who are charging a lot of money for basically a version A basics software, and I thought, yeah, that is. At Gartner, we learned to say the same thing, like typing like 5 pages with 5 diagrams. And I, guilty as charged, 5 years, I did the Magic Quadrant and, oh yeah, let's move this little vendor up a millimeter. And I typed a lot. But I thought that was a rather accurate. Now, granted, there are some vendors who I think fall outside of that. But I thought that was a rather, accurate. And what do you think? Was that a good, from a technical practitioner, was that not too far off as a description?
I think that's fairly accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else on value of cybersecurity before we are drum roll. That was number 9. We have 10, 11, and 12 coming up to wrap up. Anything else on price of security before I turn it over to the music industry?
No, I just think that at some point we're going to have to figure out what is the practical ceiling for security spend, or is there one? Because most companies do not say that security is their core business, but it is core to keeping the business going. And trying to figure out exactly what that means is a tricky thing to do from a business perspective. I remember just when I was getting my MBA, we spent very little time on describing the value of security, but it was this countervailing pull of, on the one hand, saying we have no idea how valuable this is, and on the other hand, you pretty much should buy something if your CISO really insists on it. There's really nothing in between.
Yeah. All excellent points, and what I will try to, if you are listening to this and you have perspectives to share on quantifying security and helping a CISO talk with the CEO and her peer, the CIO, please let me know. And this does seem to be a recurring theme. I noticed quite a few things, not just RSA, but for example, some of the government RFIs or RFXs that came out this week, where I was reading one that was clearly the CISO perspective, and I was reading another that was clearly kind of the data architecture IT perspective. And one of the things that I typed, since we can say the word NSA, I felt, all right, I'm just gonna, live life on the fringe, be bold, be brave, and I just typed in, this looks like could use more of a, security and, data architecture, sharing of perspectives. And speaking of that, I will turn it, I'm going to do my number 5 very quickly. If you did not have a chance to see the Face the Music panel, which was Tuesday, April 25th, 1:15 p.m. Pacific, please watch it. This was one of my personal favorites, and I included, musician perspectives from the music industry, an FBI agent in charge, so drum roll. We now have your final one, and tell us about the quantum education and simulations.
Yeah, I was fascinated to see how many companies were talking about quantum computing and the need for quantum-enabled algorithms. I know there's been marketing around it. IBM has been at the head of the pack with developing quantum computing, and obviously we want to be prepared in case, say, a foreign entity or a bad actor ends up having access to quantum computing capabilities that are able to actually break through existing encryption keys. But the reality is that we don't have quantum computing today that can do a lot of this, that works at that level. And frankly, much of the quantum computing that gets tested are simulations rather than actual quantum computing that gets used. This is one of these very unpredictable tech areas where something could be ready in 10 years, something could be ready in 30 years. But it feels a little odd to me that we have this quantum encryption worry, and we're working on quantum quantum encryption support. But at the same time, that has kind of been taken over by the worries of AI. AI just completely, did an end run around our quantum concerns because of the stuff we talked about just before. AI's ability to create so much content that it can overwhelm even the hardiest of defensive measures at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to this money that has been put into quantum enablement, quantum algorithm supporting or defensive enablement at a time when we now suddenly have bigger concerns. But at the same time, there's going to be money to be made in future-proofing your algorithms.
Well, hello.
Hey, Pupper.
Can you still hear me? I was trying to.
Sure.
Okay, well, and thank you. And this is my dog Cosmo. And Cosmo, I adopted him, like a lot of people, I adopted a new dog at the start of COVID. And he has a really good sense of when video meetings are about to end. But this also ties in of Cosmo, I don't know if they're related or just same breed, but my number one, final thing is just a reminder of why are we in this business? This was Friday, and so as many people were traveling back from San Francisco, it just so happened to be that the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, this very nice post by the director, Jen Easterly, with the photographs of, it was Family Day on Friday, and companies do this, the government does this. If you work at the White House, you can bring your kids to the White House, one day a year. But what I wanted to show is just these beautiful children, family members, the I Love Cyber little hand wave, and getting to the end here. And you can see the adults kind of doing fun things, because going to the office, I imagine, for a kid could be a little bit boring, but the adults are doing fun things. There's Jen talking with kids, which is great if you want to be a future cyber person. She is the director of the agency and has a very important role to play in the federal government, but here taking time to play with kids and do the Rubik's Cube. And the final image is this is Cosmo's distant cousin, who, unlike my dog, who has been napping this entire nearly hour podcast, this is a working dog at the offices. You can see, it's hard for me to see if this is DHS or what police unit, but the working dog here. And what, again, if it's too small, please look up Jen Easterly's LinkedIn post, or others, go to the agency website, where you can see, kids being kids, all that stuff before, that they did with the, adults like playing and Jen showing the Rubik's Cubes, that was all fine. But obviously for these two young men, seeing the dog may have been the highlight, because you can see their beautiful expressions about, oh, there's a puppy we get to play with. And so for me, that is all that I have. Anything that you want to add before we say thank you to our audience and close out today's RSA wrap podcast?
Just that it's been a pleasure. It's been great to bounce ideas off of you past couple days, and just talk about what we saw last week and what it means for the state of the market as we deal with an ever more confusing world of cybersecurity.
It is, and thank you for joining today, sharing your perspective, and thank you all who actually have watched this, and I hope you found it beneficial. Feel free to ping either of us with your questions, since we didn't do this live. And with that, on behalf of Amalgam Insights and Cyber Dunedain, thank you much.